Hey everyone, I'd like to welcome to our 21st Masterclass. Today we're going to be covering gestures, and we're going to be covering the animation system and a whole bunch of stuff related to that. So for those who have not really played around with them much, in Sinespace we have a whole bunch of built-in gesture facilities, and they've got the capacity to do more than just simply animate the character. We can animate the camera, we can animate props, we can attach all sorts of bits and pieces to an avatar. As you can see, these are sort of just a simple dance move, but we'll actually pull one of those apart today and we can have a look at it. In fact, I've got this very dance move and a whole bunch of other ones importing into my project. One of the other things we can do is create multi-person animations, and I just need to find someone who hopefully is setting out their computer, and I'll do a simple animation. We'll see who gets this one first. If anyone. Anyone? Maybe not. Okay, so I'm going to go back into Unity, which is just about done with importing this package. Now, this package contains basically all of our dance moves. Many of those we built for other virtual worlds and sort of remastered for Sinespace. And I'll just try and find where exactly these are. So you can see here, this is one of them. This is the animation that actually came through. So I'm going to go pull these apart. Let's just try and find one that I like, and then I'm going to build a new one from scratch using a library that's online. We're actually going to use the Mixmo library and make a simple gesture for a wave as the second part of this, after I just pull apart the first one. So the key to getting started with gestures is you actually want to use the gesture preview scene. And this is in every editor pack by default. You can find this one, and if we just go down here, you'll actually see that there is a pair of characters. These are using slightly older character models, but they're still good. And you can see they're just there. And we've got the capacity when we've got one of these systems in place to be able to test out gestures using the clip system. So I'm just going to try and find not the source files, but the original prefabs. Okay, we've got a two-person dance here. We'll use the Barracuda. So if I pull that one into here, and that's all good to go, I should, fingers crossed, just about to hit play and observe the animation as it goes. Now this I have not played with for a while, so we'll have to just make sure that it actually does work. And this might be an interesting, fun challenge, because we already have hit a problem. Unfortunately, we haven't sort of touched this in 2016, so these tools are a little bit special. So what I'm going to do is I'll just pull this animation apart before we build a new one. The basics of gestures is they all rely on components starting with the word avatar effect, or they contain the words avatar effect. So we go in the component system, we've got avatar effects. We actually have all categories of them, I think. If we go sort of under avatar effects, there we go. We have a selection of them. What you can do here is, for instance, animate a single avatar, play audio, the base component, which you need on all of them. You can make cameras follow things and paths. You can create an object and attach it to an avatar. You can actually also create them, attach them to the ground. And there's take snapshots and animate multiple avatars, which is used for two-person animations. Now, what we will do is that I'll walk through this animation. Now, unfortunately, it does look like the previewing has degraded over time, and I'm not 100% sure how we can get that one quickly fixed. There might be a way to do it if I just pull the camera rig in. Pull this guy into the scene, it probably should be okay. Might be a little bit of a mess, but I'll drop him in there, and I'll just disable this camera. Just might just give that a quick test. If that's not, I will issue a quick patch on this one soon. Doesn't look like it's been part of our testing process. We'll need to get that into the editor pack tests. Okay, so we've got the character animations and things is working with the clip system here. That's good. We just need to figure out why that's not behaving. Is there something missing from this component? Participants 2. I'll give this one a check in a second. Okay, so walking back, the clip itself. So as I said, that a gesture is built from a sequence of events. Now Unity have introduced a new system called a timeline, which I'll also try and cover off today because the timeline is quite powerful, and timeline is actually what we're going to replace the gesture system with. And we'll get to that maybe in a bit. That's actually a full sort of keyframed authoring system designed exactly for this sort of thing. So we've got 3 components attached to this one. The first is the avatar effect, and basically the avatar effect is the root of your gesture. It basically indicates the number of participants that are part of the gesture. So for multi-person gestures, you need to sort of set 1, 2, 3, whatever. If there is a nominal gender on this thing, it will actually sort of auto-sort which character gets placed into the A and B slot. That slot actually is probably depreciated, and we will sort of pull that one out because it's not really something you really need at the moment. For triggers, now for multi-person animations, you do need to use the trigger radius. We do have the plan of adding some additional triggers as people request them for how the animation gesture gets started, particularly things like perhaps slash commands and things we could embed into the gesture itself. Finally, a tick box just to indicate whether the gesture is looped or not, and that should basically keep playing until the user tells it to stop. The next component we've got attached to it is the avatar effect camera movement. Now this is the one that's actually controlling that camera. You saw the camera bounce around a bit. Now you might be curious how these are actually constructed. And if I pull this guy into the scene, which has got the animation attached to it, I think we've got a camera and a camera interest prefab in here. And if I scrub along the timeline, so if you just select the camera thing and scrub along, what you'll notice is that the transform attached to this one is moving around. So it's jumping a bit and it's moving smoothly, but basically this is what the camera or position of the camera should be in relation to the gesture. And I'll show you how those are made in a second. The second one that's attached to this one is one called camera interest, and that's a similar thing. And what the camera interest is similar to the camera. It doesn't actually specify where the camera should be facing, but it does specify things like where the focus should be. So the focal length of depth of field. It also is where the camera is looking at, and a few other bits and pieces. So you use the camera interest basically to position something, usually on the character. If you've got other things like guns and things in your props, you might use those as the interest, but this camera system basically lets you load in an animation that's got paths attached to it for the camera. Now, how this one's built, there is a little bit of a trick to this one, and it is covered in the videos that cover gestures specifically. But the basics of it is it's legacy animation. That is something you need to be very careful of. So when you bring this one in, what this is this was animated in Maya originally, I believe. Might have actually, no, it's motion build this one's built, but basically what you've done is you've got two objects that are empty objects, and they are basically animated on a timeline using a single animation clip inside the FBX file. There's not much more to it than that. The next thing is that when you bring them in Unity, when you select the model in the project view, you just need to select the rig tab and make sure it's set to legacy. When we built the animation system, Unity hadn't supported arbitrary animation tracks in the generic system yet. They do now, so we will actually switch over to it at some point. Although we're more likely to switch over to timeline in general as the next upgrade for this system. Finally, the animation itself is imported as you would like. One of the things you may want to pay attention to here is file size to a degree. File size on animations can get kind of heavy, and that's because they're storing a lot of data attached to them. You can actually specify how this stuff is compressed. Now, as a creator, you don't necessarily have a huge requirement to have smaller file sizes on gestures that you make. Nonetheless, the smaller they are, the faster they'll load, and that means that people do, for instance, 2-person animations. You're not sitting there around 5 minutes waiting for the animation to download on everyone's machines before it starts. So for that, you do need to pay attention a little bit to compression. One of the best ways of doing it is just doing this animation compression. You can select 2 modes. There's keyframe reduction and compression, and keyframe reduction and compression. Now, keyframe reduction basically eliminates keyframes that are very similar to their previous keyframes. And these 3 values, the error values, indicate the number of degrees that the animation is allowed to warp before it will insert another keyframe, basically, or keep a keyframe in place. Compression takes this one step further, and it just lowers the precision of the animation degrees. I've generally found it's okay. It doesn't seem to warp things too badly. And position and rotation error, you can actually usually get a fair amount of error in here before it's actually perceptible. Setting around 2 degrees is usually what I do when I compress stuff for animations. Other than that, all the other settings for this one can be left as the default because it's using the legacy system. For other animations, we will want to go into the mechanim system, which is the humanoid animation system, which we'll get to in a second, particularly as we build a new animation. So going back to this two-person animation here, the second thing we've got the multi-animation effect. Now this one only has two avatars supported. There is a way of getting additional animation avatars for multi-person animations that are more than 2 characters. For that, I would ask you just to ask me, because it does take a bit of work and it's a bit outside the scope of today. But the key for 2-person animations, use the multi-animation effect component. You slap that onto the script and you insert 2 animations. In this case, you can see there are 2 separate files, and the reason for that is that if we have a look at this one, we have them rotated around so that the characters actually can fit on the same timeline. So this one here and this one here is sort of the corresponding animation that's designed to sync up with the original positions. You can see this one's on the left of the origin, which is that circle there, and this one is on the right, I think. Yes, this one's on the right. So both these animations would play together, and they've been authored in such a way that the animations wouldn't actually intercept with each other. That's done in Motion Builder, which is a little, again, outside the realm of today. So assuming you've got your animations, and we'll show how to get some in a moment, for this one, you just need to bring them in as humanoid animations. So on the rig tab, just select humanoid. Now for avatar definition, this is a bit of a specialized one, and I will come back to that one in a couple of minutes, just showing how to do this one. The key for humanoid animations with Unity is that we're able to use something called mechanim, and that means that this avatar, as you can see here, is not our own avatar. That's just a generic Unity avatar that we've used. What we can do though, and this is the wonder of Unity, is that we can take this and we can swap in, say, our male avatar, and what you're immediately seeing is their avatar is playing the animation. Now the key to here is that we've actually got a separate skeleton involved. This isn't the skeleton that the original animation was authored against, and that's because Unity has something called muscle space translation. If I have another character in here, I don't know if I do or not, but if I do, that's a humanoid, what I'll do is I'll show that working. Now unfortunately I don't think I do. So we might have to wait on that one. But basically, long story short, any humanoid animation will translate across any other humanoid shape. And that means things like costume avatars that sort of bypass the normal animation system. They can still use the animations in gestures. It's one of the cool perks of working with Unity. So, going back to this component, you may sort of wonder, what if we want to do sort of one animation after the other, or we want to mix and match when these effects happen. One of the things you'll notice is you've usually got start and end times on every single one of these components, and that means that you can actually set them along a timeline. So you can say, oh, this one's starting at 0 seconds, so it's starting straight away, but if I wanted to wait a moment before this animation started, I can set that to 4, and the avatar camera movement would begin to play, then 4 seconds in, the gesture animation would begin to play. Now timeline will make this a bit easier to play with, but otherwise it's pretty straightforward. One of the things that you will have to worry about a little bit if you're doing 2-person animations is synchronizing characters. Lots of avatars have wildly different proportions, and that means that, for instance, hands are different lengths, legs are different lengths, avatars are generally different sizes. And if you've got an animation where there is a hand clap, for example, where you're doing a high five and both hands need to match the other player, in those cases you want to use this little tick box, fix avatar heights, and what that does is actually just ensures both avatars are proportional to each other, and that means that animations that are precisely authored and designed to have 2 avatars, for instance, meet their hands in the middle, you can do that. Now one of the neat things that we've got is that if you don't want to do it that way, that is to say you don't want to fix the avatar heights, is you can actually use the inverse kinematic system to automatically cause the avatar's hands, for instance, to be at a particular point at a particular time. If you look on the avatar effect for animate single avatar, I'll just actually go into these avatar effects. There is one for animate single avatar. Oh, sorry, no, it's not that one. It's in the multi-animation targets. You can actually set the IK targets on this one, and you can actually set that at particular times. So say this one, I'm going to have 2 IK targets. I can actually say that the at between 0.5 seconds and 0.6 seconds, we can actually set that the initiator of the animation's left foot will reach the, I don't know, let's say left shoulder of the destination. That's the other avatar in the system. And then we can actually say at that same time, the other avatar's right foot will reach the right shoulder of the other avatar. Actually, that it'll be left on both, I think. So we'll say 0.6. At the same time, we can actually do the other one. We do it at the receiver. We can set the right foot, and we'll put it at the jaw. And basically, at this particular point, the avatar will actually automatically sync up those points. So it'll actually pull the avatar to do it. Now, if the avatars are really wildly proportioned, they may still not be able to reach those points. Say, for instance, you've got a giant and an avatar that's 5 centimeters tall. In those cases, the IK won't be able to reach the target. There's not enough room to work with. But for the most part, for general avatar sizings, this is a good way of getting around the problem of trying to synchronize animations between multiple characters. So I'm going to pull that one out. This one's a fairly simple avatar animation, but what I am going to do is I'm going to upload a new gesture using a wave, and I'll actually even release this one in the store. So what I have done is I've gone to Mixamo, and Mixamo.com has a whole section of free animations which are rigged to their characters. Now this is again a different skeleton to the one we're using, but we will be able to use it to actually upload stuff into Sinespace. So I'm just going to download this this one. Some key things to pick on your settings: keep the format as FBX. Actually, we'll use FBX for Unity. That sounds like a better option. Skin, we're going to set without skin, and that means it's not going to import the model with it. We're going to set the frame rate to 60 because that is the frame rate we use internally. It can be lower; it doesn't really matter. It will interpolate between the two. But if you've got 60 frames per second data, you may as well use it. And we won't do any keyframe reduction. We'll do that within Unity if we want to. Always try and keep your source materials at the highest level you can and let the compression happen inside Unity. So I'm just going to make a new folder, and we're going to start making a gesture. Pardon me. So, just got this guy. So let's see here. We've got our rig. It's currently set to generic. We need to set this to humanoid. Now I've ticked create from this model because I don't have an avatar already set up for this. The avatar is sort of something that's unique per skeleton. You need one per skeleton at least. And what we can see here is if let's say changes that scene. We actually probably won't be able to see this so much because I've got no skinning attached to this one, but it's probably all okay. As you can see here, all the bones and things are slotted in. I'll show you a configuration on a different model in a moment. Actually, is there a jawbone? Probably doesn't really matter. But long story short, we can see that we've got the neck there, the head, left eye, all those bits and pieces are all fully attached. All the various bones in the hands, body, and so forth are all set up. And by doing that setup, Unity now knows what the animation actually looks like. So I set that to animation, and what you can see here is that our character is back, and we can wave. Fairly straightforward process to bring that in. Now, some skeletons are a bit different and a bit harder to work with, and what I might look on is some on Mixamo that are using a skeleton that looks really different. We want something that's got proportions that are completely out of whack. So these are all sort of normal humans, like our avatar. But if we can find one that's not matching the same proportions, what we find is like feet slipping and whatever, and we just do a little bit of a quick pass on those ones. So, is that one? This looks kind of not humanoid. I don't know. No, unfortunately, that one's still. They probably used one skeleton for all of these, so it's unlikely that we'll be able to find what we want here. This is a useful library, incidentally, if you ever want to make stuff that needs animations. There's a good good set on the Mixamo library, and they're completely free to use. And Mixamo has explicitly authorized their use in Sinespace. So if you are doing things like reselling, it won't technically violate our rules. Although, just as a matter of good practice, please do put some actual work into anything you want to sell. Okay, so we've got our wave animation here, all pretty straightforward, and we're going to upload this one. This one should only take a minute, if that, to actually set up. So what I'll do is I'm just going to create a new game object. It's going to be an empty game object. Don't have to put it at 0, 0, 0, but I will. And we're just going to attach avatar effect. This is going to be our first one. I'm going to set this as a participants 1. Won't use radius, won't be looped. It's just going to be a one-off gesture. I'm going to use the single player animate. So animate single avatar. I'm just going to drag this animation, which you can see here. So when we brought this one in, we've got this waving animation that's just sort of a sub-component of that gesture. So I'm just going to drag waving into here. That's going to be initiated because there is only the one character in this one. Start time 0. I'm not going to fix the avatar's height because we're not going to need to do anything like that. And this guy is pretty much good to go. There is not much more that we need to do, in fact, to upload this animation. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to add the virtual good. I'm going to set this one as a gesture. Now this is important, it must be set as a gesture, otherwise it will not work. Category, gesture, emotes, single person, and details. We'll get this fixed. Okay, that's going to be fine. I'm going to set this, actually it is going to be for sale. That's -1 for gold, just so it doesn't get sold for gold. But I'll set this for 100 silver. I'll allow it in promotions with a maximum 90% off, if that does go into promotions. Okay, now we need an icon for this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this. Not the world's best icon here, but close that one out. Wait for Photoshop to decide that unfreezing is a good idea. I think Photoshop and Visual Studio are in a running race to find out which one can actually be slower. God, they're really asking for it today. Okay, so I'll just grab that and incidentally, these icons actually do get resized on the server, so you only need to worry too much about them if they're going to need to be pixel perfect. I'll just put a little bit of gradient across this one. There we go. Simple icon. Okay. And where is this guy? So this one is an icon. Okay. Right. So where's our virtual wood? Just go back to that. Brand icon, I don't want 40 by 60. That's actually not really used one, but 140 by 60. If you're doing furniture and stuff, there's actually a whole bunch of new tools that we've got in place. Why are you doing that? That make life easier here. Right, okay. go. We'll just set this one to copyright 2. Okay. Let's fill that guy out. Okay, we are almost good to go. I'm just going to set this to wave. That's the name. Just going to click fix now to convert that to a virtual good. Okay, and now I think we're good to go. Everything should be all good. And we'll just upload this one. This should only take a minute to process. I don't actually anticipate this being a particularly long step on processing. My guess is that within the next 5 minutes or so, we should be able to sort of preview this one quite quickly. Already see it's starting to process right now. Okay, all right. Humanoids. Now, humanoids are something that I was going to cover a second ago, which basically is the configuration of the animation rig. Now, because we brought one in that had a bit of a funny a different skeleton, it didn't have actually a skeleton attached to it, so we couldn't configure it. This one might do. Let's see if we can find one. What I want to do is I want to find one where the feet are slipping around a bit. Unfortunately, Mixamo, I think, do some actually intelligent logic here to prevent that from happening. One of the things you do find is that if you bring in animations, particularly for other skeletons, like for instance our old fly animations, I think are a particularly good case study. So we're going to try and find one. Here we go, perfect. So this is an animation that we built for our old virtual world, and I talked about the issues of humanoid animation translation not always working correctly. So we've got a couple of issues with this one. The biggest is the slipping. So this animation was built for a very different skeleton. This one had much less human proportions. It was a bit more cartoony. I think we had a larger torso than we did the legs. So we'll see all sorts of warping and things going on here. Now, the reason this is happening is basically how Unity does the translation between humanoids. The first thing it does is normally in an animation system we have sort of a bunch of nodes. So there'll be a bone node on the shoulders, there'll be one on the spine, actually usually 3 on the spine, torso, pelvis, upper leg, knee, ankle, and then the various feet bones. And how the animation works is by basically when those move around, the avatar gets dragged along with them. What this does by comparison is to allow it to translate between different skeletons. It actually works out the angles instead of the positions of those points. So what it actually says is that right now in this particular frame, I've got an almost 90-degree angle on the elbow there, and by tracking that instead of the position of the objects, it means that they can be basically replicated on different skeletons. So we can always translate that this is a 90-degree angle at this point in time on the avatar. The problem with that is that when the root node, which is typically in the pelvis, basically it means that you can get drift appearing. And what you can see here is particularly badly on the feet here. One, the root node is a little bit too high, so the feet are never planted on the ground. That is a problem. The second thing is that the feet are basically never standing still on the ground. So in a completely unnatural way, the feet are sort of drifting around. Now, the feet drifting is unfortunately a problem that you do need to spend a bit of time fixing. There's no sort of automated fix for drifting, unfortunately, and I'm sorry about that. That's just something that Unity does. Although the IK positioner will help here a lot. We'll get to that in a second. But what we can do is we can manipulate this a little bit. We can change a bit about how this goes. We won't be able to make this animation perfect. This one's going to be a problem. And part of that is the rig, which we'll get to in a second. But the other issue is that, for instance, let's take the feet. They're too high off the ground. So what we can do is we can actually, here on the root transmission position Y is the up-down axis. We can actually set that to feet. And now we've got the avatar, should be at the base of it at least. At the start of the animation, we've now got the avatar pinned to feet, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, it's not quite going to be perfect. So we can just set that to bake into pose, and that should hopefully keep the avatar. Not quite. helps, but doesn't completely eliminate this one. Root transport position. We can move the orientation to be consistent, and this is a little bit better. Sort of things we've changed are just these particular settings that we can manipulate a bit. Now what we can do to get a closer fit is we can actually start playing with the avatar, and that's the avatar that's attached to this one. Now I don't have the original avatar attached to this body, which might make it a little bit difficult. I'm not sure if there actually even is one included on the rig. I'm not sure that's the case, in which case this wasn't the best animation to pick. I would have to have access to the original skeletons for this one. I think this was from WetFM, which I don't have handy anymore. As you can see, it's already a bit better. We aren't drifting around quite so much, and it is a little bit improved, but not quite there yet. Now my animation for the wave is done, so we'll preview that in a second. But now I think one of the things we can do is we can potentially start manipulating the curves here. I'm not 100% sure of actually having done this directly on an animation before, but I think what we can do is we can just select the animation here, which is the female idol here. Can indeed. And as part of me doing this, I've got this one selected, so I'm just going to move this preview somewhere where we can see it. At the same time, I've got the animation track. We've actually got the full animation track down here. And I believe what we can do is that as we play through this one, I'm just going to zoom in on it. We can actually find some stuff like the avatar, up, down. We need to find the. So these are all the individual bones, the muscles, incidentally, which is how that does that translation. The turning from the positions to the angles is done through muscle groups. And as you can see here, we've got all of our muscles, but there should be one for root transform. Here we go. So we've got the root transform.y. So what we can do is we can sort of isolate through where the feet have drifted up, which is about frame 80, which is 2 in. So we actually use the time code here. We can look for it on here. What we can do is we can go here and find the Y. I'm not sure where our last Y keyframe is. And the reason is it hasn't moved on the Y. As you notice here, that the torso has remained pretty constant. What we can do is we can switch to curve view. And the problem is here, while the torso is constant, which would be fine if the legs were down, because the legs are sideways, that's sort of glitching out all over the place. So what we can do is we can actually edit these curves, incidentally. We can go and have a look at them inside Unity. You have to duplicate the animation first if you bring it into FBX to actually be able to edit it. What we can do is we can find stuff like this will be, I guess, it should be leg, I'm guessing, upper leg, if there's upper leg, front, back, upper leg, in, out, twist. I'm guessing it's probably you. I'm just going to zoom in on this guy. What we can do is we should be able to just, as we start editing this, Unity should pop up a bit. I don't know if we've made that worse. I think I've just made that substantially worse. As you can see, the leg is moving quite a bit as we do this. Play around with this quite a bit to get the result we want. It's maybe not that one. Let's try this one. So I think this is the twist. Yes, this is twisting the foot, I think. I'm not 100% sure which bones we're editing, but I'm just gonna really warp this one a bit and just have a look. Yep, there's our animation changes going on there. Now this probably isn't the best way of editing animations, but if you are going to be doing it, it's one way you can do it. Now I've got something to look at here, and that's our new gesture, which actually should pop into my inventory in a second. So I'm just going to go back to Unity. Now, one of the things you can do to commonly fix these kinds of issues, and unfortunately I think I do need a different skeleton. Maybe I can use the one I've got for the Barracuda animations, for example, to show you this stuff. So one of the things that you've got here is that when you bring in these humanoid animations, you can see that it's been copied from another avatar, which is this one here. When we look at the base skeleton, what we can do is we can configure how Unity is imported. And this defines things like the default ranges of the motions. Now, getting this to compare and contrast is going to be a little bit hard. Sometimes takes a little bit of work to do that one. What we can do is like the muscles and settings. And if you're using, particularly works the other way around if you're bringing in costume avatars as well, is that you want to configure these. What we want to get to is this is the optimal pose for the avatar when it is fully open, and this is the optimal avatar position when it's fully closed. Every sort of character should look very similar to this, and if it doesn't, then the actual rig needs to be adjusted to take advantage of it. Now, if it doesn't, and in fact our particular rig that's in the editor pack might even need some refining, so what we'll do is we'll try and get that same pose on our default one. The one that's actually in the live client, I think, is a little bit different. I'll go to the 2015 male. This is probably the worst of the two. Okay. Oh no, it's actually pretty good. What we might want to do, for instance, if we want animations to pop a bit more, this is again more important if you're doing costume animations, but if you're bringing in animations from another avatar, by setting these values correct and getting them to look the same, it will mean that the avatar will not, the animations will import more cleanly, and you'll get less of that sort of feet dragging and stuff. So what we could do here, this one is mostly okay, but the chest is a little bit wrong, and the reason for that is that the bend is right here in the back, and that's basically just back cracking. We should have a little bit more along the spine a bit more evenly. So we can actually edit this stuff on a few of these nodes. And this is the spine, front, back in particular. You can sort of see there. We've got some, and we've got front, back on the chest. And so I think we might want to get a little bit, like I said, more on the upper body, I'm guessing not. So if we want to do that, what we can do is we can actually change the range of motion. This means that when for instance, the elbow moves from 0 to 90 degrees, we can actually change that range. We can make it maybe 20 degrees to 110 degrees or something similar. And that actually gives more room for natural animations here. And to do that, we just grab these endpoints. So I can say this one actually probably looks a bit closer now that it's like that. Although the bend has gotten a bit worse there, so what we might do is pull this guy back. Whoops. And you basically just do this until you've got your... Now arms, I guess the same thing. I think the arms are a little bit off. So I guess the shoulder down up. That one needs to be a little bit further in because the hands were touching in the other one. So we'll just move that about 33 degrees. You usually only need to do tiny modifications here. And where's our right arm? Shoulder down up, and we'll set that to 30 degrees as well. That's closer. It's more likely to be touching. Okay, now the next... that's probably okay. Now when you do this on the root configuration of the avatar, what it'll do is it'll bring in the... it'll edit every animation that's been rigged to this particular skeleton. And if you've done this once, like we have here, normally what you could be doing is you could actually be adjusting... oh, hello. What do we have you? No, I guess not. That would have been a good one to use. So if I go back to my Barracuda animations, you'll notice that the humanoid is actually copying from a different model, and that means you only need to configure that once for multiple avatars. So if you can configure it on the animation directly, but you can also just have one copy if you've got a whole bunch of animations using the same skeleton template as you did before. Now I'm just going to hop into here, where my avatar is wearing something. This is some students' items which I was reviewing over a weekend. Now inventory, I should have, we called it wave, I think, and wave should be under my gestures. Here we go. Just wait for this to load, and hello. Now I'll put that one through to review in a moment, so you guys can use that on the live servers. But again, fairly straightforward process. Now, some of that's not necessarily completely natural animation. One of the things that you sort of want to pay attention to a little bit is trying to use as many bones as you can. Some of the approaches you can take to using to making animations look a bit better, particularly if you're bringing them in from older platforms. Dubbing hands is a good thing to do. The way Rowan does it, and Rowan's been sort of the head honcho of our mocap studio for many years. One of the tricks that he does is he actually dubs the hands. He has separate animation timeline, so he can just basically copy and paste onto other animations. So he actually does that as his way of doing that. So when he did these, for instance, we'll take the Barracuda animations for example. I don't know if this is a particularly great one to use. I don't know how the animation looks like, but I think there's hand movement on this one. We'll just see. So there's a little bit. He's splayed the fingers, flattened the hands, that kind of thing. That's been dubbed on top. These animations we originally built for Second Life many years ago, and when we did that, there was no hand animation there, so we actually never bothered recording it or dubbing it onto the animations. In fact, if you're doing motion capture, capturing hands and faces is often a rather difficult problem, and you usually have to do 2 separate sessions and then sort of merge together later. In our case, often just doing those things as a simple merge in animation. In fact, our little changes to the animation rig here are improved. Might need to do some poking on the default character at some point. Incidentally, if you're looking at these models and thinking, the skinning on them has been improved. These are the old character models that we were using before. We have actually cleaned those up quite a bit, and there's more cleaning coming in the next few weeks. Okay, so final things worth noting. Animations don't have to be just animations. I did show you those timelines, but you don't even need to have a character animation in them. If you look at the fireworks we did for the the July 4th event last year, this one, for example, that little firework launcher that is unfortunately a little bit hard to see, that firework launcher is in fact a gesture. We did that as a gesture specifically so it would clean up after itself after a moment, so it would sort of destroy everything and come back down. In that case, that one is again just a simple avatar effect. And I've attached to that one avatar effects, create object attach. This one you don't actually have to necessarily place it on the avatar. If you've got this place at origin thing, it'll actually just place the object in front of the avatar. It won't even attach it to the avatar itself. The other properties let you do things like attach it to the hand. So there is actually some animations in here that in Rowan's group here, and I'll come back to this because I will get that thing fixed so we can do some more, show some of the more interesting ones. But we have a few in here, like for instance one where it's sort of the Matrix style bullet time where they've both got guns and shoot each other, which is kind of cool to see. There we go. This is the one. So this one's got a bit more of a complicated effect attached to it. I'm not sure is it that one? Yeah, I guess it's so. So a few of these do have more attached to them. Actually, this one's fairly simple too. Shoot me, I wonder how many. Might not be a pack. I might have to ask for more of these. Finally, I guess probably the last thing to cover off on here before I wrap up, because we are coming up in the hour. When you do these avatar effects, you don't necessarily need to build your own camera movements. One of the things that we've got here is that we've got the camera for the character. This is a rather primitive version of Sin Machine, which is used in Timeline, and actually I will wrap up with Timeline before we go. And this one you can sort of see there's rails, so you can set it to be a linear animation that's sort of going left to right, or rotational, so it sort of spins around the avatars. You can set whether it's got linear or smooth interpolation, which basically dampens things down a little bit and maybe accelerates or decelerates in constant motion. If a linear, or if you want something more fluid, use smooth, and then you can just sort of set the positions that the camera will move along those points. And you can set things like the tracking target, so it starts on one avatar and finishes on another's. So you can have one avatar's face, so you just do the, say, left eye or whatever, the head. There we go. We can do that in the head, and we can actually have that. That would transition the animation linearly from the initiator's head to the receiver's head there. Okay, so timeline is probably the last thing I'm just going to touch on. Timeline is a new facility that is coming in, and we will actually upgrade all this stuff, because right now this is a bit of a clunky process. Setting the sort of the start and end times is a bit of a trial and error process that's not particularly good. One of the things Unity have done recently is they've made something called Timeline. Timeline is an animation pipeline similar to this one down here, but it's designed for events rather than sort of keyframing in digital modes. So I'll just select a game object. I'm going to create a new timeline demo, and on here I'm just going to sort of make this a track. We can actually grab objects, so I can put that onto the animation track as well, and we can start moving these around. And this one lets us basically do more sophisticated animation. So for instance on here we can add an event track as well, so an activation track, and we can add things like active, deactivate. We can add these sort of what Unity called playables. At some point in the future, we will have the capacity to actually be able to edit this stuff. We'll be able to put camera angles and all sorts of bits and pieces and actually build gestures this way, because it's a far more sophisticated and intelligent system for doing complex gestures. Okay, so I'm just going to finish up there. What I will do is I will revisit this topic, probably not next week, but maybe in a week or two, and we will sort of show in a bit more previewing, and maybe we can actually sneak some of the timeline support in. I'm not 100% sure how hard it would be. I'm guessing it's probably a pretty easy job, but that's another topic for later. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next week.